In the spring of 2008, something unremarkable changed hands at a London auction house. Nobody was particularly excited. The catalogue entry was straightforward, a Renaissance workshop piece, competent but uninspired, bearing the characteristics of a busy studio's production line, damaged, discolored, covered in the kind of accumulated grime that accumulates when a painting spends centuries passing through private collections, each owner adding a fresh layer of varnish in hopes of brightening what they couldn't properly restore. The acquisition price reflected this indifference, $2 million. Significant money, certainly, but the kind of significant that suggests nice to own, rather than this changes everything. But Adam Williams, an American dealer who purchased the work, carried a theory nobody else seemed to consider. He wasn't buying what the auction house was selling. He believed something lived underneath all those layers, something the centuries had deliberately hidden, either through carelessness or the kind of historical erasure that happens when attribution becomes a matter of gossip. Rather than documentation, he took the painting to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. What happens when you remove 500 years of accumulated damage from a work of art isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just clean, but sometimes, when you're very fortunate, it's resurrection. The conservators began the painstaking work of removal. Each layer of varnish came away, yellowed and opaque, like peeling away the decades themselves. And as the surface emerged, something became visible that had been completely obscured, detail work of astonishing precision. Not the competent but uninspired composition the auction house had described, but something executed with an almost obsessive commitment to biological accuracy. The demons surrounding the central saint weren't generic monsters pulled from imagination. Their scales caught light in the exact way fish scales catch light. The feathers showed an understanding of plumage structure that required not just observation but study. Close examination of the brushwork revealed something the original engraving this panel was supposedly copied from didn't possess: actual knowledge of how nature constructed these details. This raised a question nobody could initially answer. Why would a workshop painter spend time studying ichthyology to paint demons? Keith Christensen, the museum's curator of European paintings, studied the cleaned panel and made an observation so immediate, so certain that it carried the weight of absolute conviction. This is Michelangelo. His certainty wasn't based on guesswork. It centered on a technical choice so distinctive, so particular to one artist's methodology, that it functioned almost like a fingerprint. The cross-hatching technique used to create shadow in the rock formations below the saint's floating figure. Sharp, emphatic parallel lines applied with a confidence that bordered on aggressive, carried the unmistakable signature of a single artist working in a particular way. But how could this be? How could an attributed workshop piece suddenly transform into something created by history's most celebrated artist? The answer required technology that didn't exist when the painting was last examined by serious scholars. Infrared imaging, the kind of scanning that reveals what human eyes cannot perceive, showed something extraordinary. The artist hadn't just painted what we see. He'd changed his mind, corrected his work, scraped back the surface to clarify lines, built up texture where it needed emphasis. These weren't the mechanical repetitions of copying. These were the decisions of someone working through composition in real time, problem solving as the work developed. But there was more. Hyperspectral imaging technology that essentially photographs across multiple wavelengths of light revealed something on the lower section of the panel that nobody had seen in 5 centuries. A casual sketch barely visible to the naked eye, executed quickly in what appeared to be a moment of absent-minded doodling. The subject was recognizable to anyone who knew Renaissance Florence. The architectural details and compositional elements of a fresco being painted in the same workshop during the autumn of 1487. The hidden sketch wasn't just art historical evidence. It was a timestamp, a young artist sitting in a busy studio, working on one painting while around him colleagues executed a fresco commission. In a moment of inattention, or perhaps intentional documentation of the work surrounding him, he sketched what he observed. Art historians identified the specific fresco, the Birth of the Baptist, commissioned for the workshop of Domenico Ghirlandaio, Florence's most prestigious painting studio during the Renaissance. Suddenly, impossibly, the painting had a date, not an estimated date, not an educated guess, a precise confirmation. To understand what happened next, you need to know about the boy himself. He wasn't supposed to become a painter at all. Born in 1475 in a Tuscan village to a minor bureaucrat, he was raised in circumstances of modest respectability. His childhood contained violence. His father beat him for artistic ambitions, as if discipline could redirect inclination away from what seemed an impractical pursuit. His mother died when he was young. He grew up surrounded by stone dust, in the household of a stonecutter's family, absorbing an entire philosophy of art from people who understood the permanence of carving, the way stone resists and requires respect. By 1487, when he was apprenticed to Ghirlandaio's workshop, arguably the most prestigious artistic training available in the Italian peninsula, he was already understood to be exceptional. But not in painting. Nobody was training him as a painter. He was meant to learn fresco technique, workshop production, the collaborative machinery that created the massive commissions that built Florence's wealth and reputation. Then a fellow apprentice named Francesco Granacci gave him something, a print by Martin Schongauer, a German master whose engravings circulated among Italian artists as models and inspiration. The print depicted St. Anthony of Egypt, the saint famous in Christian tradition for his desert solitude and his documented supernatural torments, demons lifting him into the air, attacking his body, testing his spiritual resolve. The young apprentice took the print, acquired materials, and produced something that shouldn't have existed. Not a copy, but a transformation. Ghirlandaio's response was complicated. According to the workshop's later chroniclers, the master painter experienced something between admiration and disturbance. One biographer would later describe it more pointedly. Ghirlandaio claimed the painting as a product of his own workshop. He needed the credit to stay within the studio's output. The claim itself is the message. A master painter felt compelled to assert ownership of work produced by a child to maintain his professional reputation, but the painting isn't a copy. And this distinction matters enormously. Where the original engraving shows St. Anthony surrounded by demonic chaos, the young artist's version creates something theologically profound through compositional precision. The demons press from every direction simultaneously, their various limbs and features creating a visual storm around the saint's body. But the saint's expression, serene, almost unreachable, the face of someone experiencing torment while remaining untouched by it, transforms the meaning entirely. The original saint looks traumatized. This saint looks transcendent. Additionally, the young artist added an element completely absent from his source material, a landscape at the bottom of the composition. The Arno River Valley appears with precise topographical detail, recognizably Florence, unmistakably home. A boat navigates open water, while demons above accomplish nothing of permanence. He was 12. He made technical and theological choices that reframed the entire subject matter. He studied fish scales at the market to understand how light moved across their surfaces, translating that knowledge into demon anatomy. He added an allegory to what was supposed to be a simple copy. He signed nothing, he asked for nothing. The painting then disappeared into the kind of obscurity that isn't dramatic, it's just the slow, inevitable erasure of the unattributed. For 5 centuries it passed through private collections. Each owner added varnish, each generation forgot more context. By 2008, it had become a footnote. Workshop production, competent but unremarkable, bearing the name of Ghirlandaio, because that was the safest attribution. The only surprising thing about its re-emergence wasn't that it was genuine, it was that nobody seemed particularly surprised when the evidence accumulated. The unique cross-hatching technique, the pentimenti revealing intuitive working process, the hidden sketch providing exact documentation of when the work was made. Today, the painting resides in the Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth, Texas. It remains one of only 4 surviving easel paintings by Michelangelo in existence. 4 paintings from the artist who painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. The painting that defined Renaissance art was created by a man who spent his entire life dismissing painting as an inferior medium, resenting commissions, claiming he was fundamentally a sculptor forced into artistic practices he never desired. The 12-year-old who studied fish scales and added allegories to copies would become the reluctant painter of Christendom's most famous ceiling. But he started here, in a workshop with borrowed materials, making choices that mattered so much that a master painter needed to claim credit for them. Sometimes genius announces itself not through fanfare, but through the kind of work that makes the people around it uncomfortable, the kind of excellence that cannot be ignored, even when everyone involved would prefer to look away. If you're looking for reminders that greatness often starts small and frequently goes unrecognized until history catches up with evidence, this painting is exactly that reminder, waiting in a museum in Texas, finally visible after 500 years of concealment.